Hello guys, this video is going to be the first in a series of videos featuring me creating a mobile application for myself. This is not going to be a typical personal project of mine where I create a product to showcase my skills. Rather, this is going to be a solution project, for a lack of a better word, where I create a product to solve some of the necessities that I have which tends not to be solved by the retail options out there. So I'm going to create a solution for myself. As this project is intended to be used only by myself, the implementation and the design is not going to be the very best. But with that said, let's first look at the necessities which drove me down this path of creating this project. To give context about my situation, I am currently learning DSA, data structures and algorithms, and solving problems. You might know that solving problems tends to take a lot of time, and when it comes to productivity, tracking plays a vital role because only when we track our progress, we can analyze it, find mistakes, and make our learning more efficient. And when it comes to tracking my progress in terms of time units, I have two specific requirements. The first requirement is that it should be able to track the overall progress for that particular project. For example, if I had started DSA yesterday and per day have done 2 hours, this should track the total 4 hours I have. So whenever I start a session, this would continue from where I have left off. So it would track the entire time that I spent in that particular project. And the sub requirement for this is that there should be a separate overall timer for each of my projects. For example, there must be a separate timer for my DSE and separate timer for other development projects. The second and the important requirement is that there should be a separate current session progress timer which would actually start over every time. So it would start over from 0 every time, and whenever I finish this current session, it would be reset to 0. One important part is that whenever this timer is started, it would trigger the start in this timer also. So whenever I start a session, both run synchronously, but whenever I end a session, this would be the first one would be passed and the second one would reset to 0. To stress on the importance of the per session tracker, I'll put forth the example of DSA itself. There are different parts in problem solving. For example, one could be where you brainstorm and come up with a solution in the whiteboard. The second could be the implementation of solution in form of code. And third could be the debugging part where you solve issues in your code or go around edge cases. Only when you track each of these stages individually in the current session, you could identify the time you take for each of these particular parts, and you can find out if you are spending more time than you would like to in a particular part, so you can improve on it later. For example, if you are spending more time in the implementation part, then you can easily find out that you are lacking some basic building parts in the code part for that particular set of problems. But unfortunately, I could not find an application which incorporates both of these requirements. Specifically for the second requirement, we could easily use a stop block which would start over every time, starts from 0 and just track the current session progress, and when we are done with it, it will be reset back to 0. And for the first one alone, I could find multiple application which helps to track the overall progress for a different timer for different projects, but I could not find something which incorporates both. So I'm going to create something which has an overall progress and also a per session timer which continues the overall progress also. So now that I have said what I would like to have, let's go on to see how I would like to make that into reality. For the sake of this video, please assume that this is an illustration of a mobile screen. I have added the different functional components of the application. The first one is the current session timer. So it is the timer used to track the current session. It would start from 0 every time. And then there is this drop down where you could select the project, for example, a DSA or a web development project. And then the third one here is the total time spent in the project. So whichever project you select in this drop down, the total time will be fetched from the backend and shown here. And then we have two buttons here. The one is the play pause button. So eventually when this is 0 when you start it, both of them will start. When you pause it, both of them will pause, and there is this reset timer. When you reset it, this current timer would become 0, and this would be paused. And then we have this additional options button, which would take you to a menu where you can edit your projects, add new projects, and maybe have analytics such as graphs. But this is out of scope for my requirement, but maybe in the future we can have it. So now let's move on to the practical steps that I'm going to take to complete this project. Firstly, for development, I should address my tech stack, which is going to be Kotlin and Android Studio. There are two reasons for this decision. The first is that I'm using an Android device, and Kotlin and Android Studio is going to be perfect. The second and the major factor is that I'm already familiar with Kotlin and Android Studio. I have already developed applications using Kotlin and Android Studio. So this option is going to be the one which has less friction in the way to create the application. So I have chosen this. So the first practical step would be to get back at Kotlin, because it has been several months since I have used Kotlin, and also the fact that my new development machine does not have Kotlin and Android Studio set up. So my first step would be to set up Kotlin and maybe brush over some fundamentals. And once I have started with that, the second step is going to be building a minimal viable version of my application, which is going to be functional but without any design aspects, so it is going to look ugly. So if I am building this project without documenting it, I would happily stop right here in the second step, because I'll be the only one using this product, and I don't need aesthetics. But since I'm documenting it for you guys, I'll definitely going to the third step, which is designing the product. I'm not going to go overboard in designing and to make it very pretty, but I'm actually going to be spending very little time as possible to make the product look decent. So to make it look decent, not beautiful. So I'm going to have spent very minimal time here. So and that's it. These are the practical steps that I'm going to take to develop this new product. So there are going to be multiple videos that are going to come out on this topic. So stay tuned, guys.